Hi, my presentation is on how to become immortal according to the ancients. I didn't survey many ancient cultures, but I looked at the religious writings and history of Greece and India. Now, Hindu religions and Greek, they share some similarities, and they belong to what is usually called Indo-European religion. Plato's views on the soul, some scholars think that his views more closely reflect the contemporary Vedic beliefs from India. And there are a lot of cosmological, linguistic, and mythological similarities, which are also seen in Iranian, Scandinavian, Roman religions, and others as well. So I'm going to briefly cover the Eleusinian mysteries, Orphism, Plato, Pythagoras, and the Vedas, and Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata from India. Immortality. The idea is present in ancient Greece and early India that immortality can be achieved through structured methods, what one scholar calls technologies of self-immortalization. There was preoccupation among ancient philosophers in Greece and Rome about what constitutes the self. There's no consensus, but the concept of immortal soul was given a vocabulary by Pythagoras and the Orphic cults, specifically about the transmigration of the soul. The idea that once you die, the soul leaves the body and may enter into another. The mystic path includes the Orphic mysteries and Eleusinian mysteries, and mystery cults arose in early Greek religious culture, with the Eleusinian mysteries being thought to predate Homer, and Orphism and Pythagoreanism first appearing in the 6th century BC. What they have in common is the vision quest style of catabasis, or descent into the underworld, to pursue the wisdom of the dead. The Eleusinian mysteries centered around the sanctuary of Eleusis, and was based on the rites of Demeter, the grain goddess. This was based on a myth of Hades abducting Demeter's daughter, Persephone, and in her grief, Demeter allowed the world to become barren until she was reunited with her daughter. She was said to have bestowed the mysteries as a gift towards the mortal Triptolemus, and those who engage in the ceremonies are said to have access to immortality. The ritual involved a procession, purification, fasting, and the consumption of a ritual elixir made partly from grain, and finally, a big reveal. Unfortunately, talking publicly or to the uninitiated about what went on during the inner mysteries was heavily punished, so we don't know too much about it. This is a reconstruction from the ruins of the sanctuary of Demeter and Corea at Eleusis. This is a fragment of the hymn to Demeter. Blessed is the mortal on earth who has seen these rites, but the uninitiated, who has no share in them, never, has the same lot once dead in the dreary darkness. There were a lot of famous Greeks, however, who participated, so we can get glimpses of what may have happened there. Diotima was a teacher of Socrates and describes to him the process by which human beings should follow Eros to the highest revelation. During the final revelation of the mysteries, there was said to be some kind of flash of light as the Hierophant emerged to produce the highest of revelations. Diotima describes that the ancient symbols of divinity are disclosed to the purified initiate in a sudden blaze of light. The soul is united with the divine beauty, and itself becomes immortal and divine. Orphic mysteries aren't known in the earliest stages, but we have a quote from Pindar, who is probably influenced by the religious faith, which involves an expectation of life after death. The wicked suffer pain, but those who have maintained an innocent state and keep their souls free from unjust acts are promised salvation. The word Orphic comes from the name Orpheus, a mythological figure who is considered the best musician and poet of all, a prophet whose music was so sublime that he moved those residing in the underworld to agree to release his love, Eurydice. Orphic teaching about the soul was afterwards assimilated not only by Pindar, but also by the philosophers, particularly Pythagoras, Empedocles, and Plato. On inscribed tablets buried with the dead, they contain instructions for conduct in the world below, exhortations to the soul, formularies, and confessions of the faith and of rituals performed. One of the fragments celebrates Zeus as first and last, head and middle, out of whom all things are created. The soul, according to the Orphic view, is of celestial origin and divine. It is part of the pure Empyrean substance or ether. Tablets include, "From heaven is my descent, as ye yourselves know also," and that is also how the departed soul addresses the gods of the lower world. And again, "For I too claim to be of your blessed race." The tradition itself is secret, and much of its meaning is concealed in riddles and metaphor. The Orphic hymns, fragments which comprise a great epic poem, and the story it tells, has been reconstructed. These are 87 hymns to the gods which were used in the ancient Greek religion. Although the date of composition is unknown, some are before the time of Aristotle. The Orphics say that the body is a tomb, something that Plato borrowed, and its imprisonment in the body has a penitentiary purpose. As soon as the soul descends and the doors close, Orphics call this the circle of wheel of generation and circle of necessity, a long repetition of birth and death before the soul can return. The newly dead drank from the river Letha and would lose all memory of their past existence. The initiated were taught to seek instead the river of memory and reach the end of the transmigration of the soul. You might notice this is a similar concept to samsara, or reincarnation in Eastern religions. Because freedom is lost through sin, the way to regain it is through purification of the soul. From Italian tablets, the departed spirit addresses Persephone, "Pure I come from the pure." The parallel technology of immortality was the path of philosophy. It could be attained by the theoretical life. Unlike today, which treats philosophy as more disembodied, philosophy was considered part of a holistic way of life. Pythagoras briefly had followers after his death, and Plato contended with the Pythagoreans. They were the ones who discussed death with Socrates when he decided that living the right way and being killed for it was superior to living longer, possibly because of a happy afterlife. Pythagoras said that he lived 10 or 20 human generations. He believed in reincarnation. He said that he recalled his past lives and that his exploits were described in Homer. He also believed that through an indefinite cycle of reincarnations, one could achieve immortality. So you can see here the similarities between Pythagoras and the Orphics. Plato uses the mystery religions as a teaching tool, and he uses language and concepts from mystery religions selectively. In Plato's so-called project of making ourselves as godlike as possible, he elaborates on the soul's immortality and states that immortality is part of the soul's essential nature, that it is conferred on the soul, and that immortality is won by each individual. Around 387 to 386 BC, Plato made his first trip to Sicily, which was where he encountered Orphism and Pythagoreanism. Many of his texts were probably written after the visit. He engages 3 Pythagorean motifs: the body as prison, reincarnation, and postmortem reward and punishment. This is from Timaeus. But what then is the proper end of human existence in positive terms, and what is immortality's role in all of this? To give himself the best chance of living the life of reason. That is, the end of man's existence is to attend to the most divine part of us. The desire of the most divine part of us for wisdom is inbuilt in man's constitution as one of the 2 fundamental desires that human beings possess. Now we're going to go to India, because I think the similarities between Vedic and Greek cosmologies are fascinating. Ancient Hindu texts contain sophisticated reflections about man's constitution, his place in the universe, and his self. As far as religious rituals go, the Agni fire ritual is very prominent and still going on. There is also a similar practice in Bronze Age Scandinavia that indicates the migration of the Indo-European peoples. Those who still practice the Agni fire ritual today say they perform it to obtain immortality. The ritual involves a long preparation, purification by way of abstinence, the consumption and oblation of a ritual elixir called soma, and the oblation of clarified butter. Finally, the ritual enclosure where all this took place is set on fire. A synonym of the drink soma is the word amrit, which first occurs in the Rig Veda and which translates to immortal or immortality. And interestingly, the Greek ambrosia, or nectar of the gods, is understood to share etymological origins. Rig Vedic religion has been called the oldest religion in the world, and the Rig Veda, which was said to be composed more than 5,000 years ago, or historically 1500 to 1200 BCE, says, "We drank soma, we became immortal, we came to the light, we found gods." The soul in Indian scriptures is Atma. In earlier times, it meant vital breath, and later meant the self in man. The Vedic peoples believed in a reward for good living in the afterlife, and pain and suffering for evildoers after death. Transmigration of the soul is a later introduction, around the 8th to 6th century BC, with an opinion that the deceased are reborn in another world after their good and bad deeds are weighed on a scale. There are also various tortures the soul may be subjected to in the afterlife. The Bhagavad Gita was composed and introduced into the Mahabharata sometime between the 4th and 2nd centuries BC. It takes place during a battle when the Lord Krishna explains to the warrior Arjuna, who doesn't want to kill his own relatives in a war, that the soul and body are separate and that those who die will be reincarnated. And to grossly oversimplify, it's kind of a carpe diem. Around this time, Socrates was in his prison cell in Athens explaining about his personal daimon, or divine guide, and that the soul may live on after death. The Mahabharata, like the Orphic religion, presents a soteriological philosophy, or a philosophy of salvation. The figure Ruru has forgotten his origins, forgets that he is a Brahmin, and that he has progressively fallen away from being, which is resonant of Orphism when the newly dead would drink from the river of forgetfulness. Ruru learns that he can only attain immortality through a recollection of the self that engenders being. The myth bears striking resemblances to that of Orpheus and Eurydice. Ruru's wife dies shortly before marriage due to a snake bite, and even the forest creatures weep for the death of both. One difference is that Orpheus loses Eurydice a second time, whereas Ruru regains his wife by giving her half of his. Because so many religious ideas are heavily influenced today by Plato and the Neoplatonists, and because Plato was influenced by, although heavily critical of these mystery religions, we can still see the vestiges of these influences today, such as in Plato's